Welcome to another one of our candidate discussions. We have with us, we're going to be talking Iowa House District 97. We have incumbent Republican Norlin Mommsen with us, Democrat Tim McClimon. They're both in the studios. Just to let you know, Libertarian David Melker Jr. filed nomination papers. We did contact him in several different fashions, never heard a response. So I think he's been in before on some of these forums, but we didn't ignore the other Libertarian candidate in the race, but we do have the two with us this morning. Tim with us this morning. Tim McClimon gets the first opening statement, then we'll hear from Norlin. So, Tim, give us an opening.
All right. Thanks for having us here today. My name's Tim McClimon. I'm a resident of DeWitt, lived in Clinton County most of my life. I'm married, have two children, both grown, both University of Northern Iowa graduates. My son Pat is in Des Moines. He works as a cook in some fancy restaurant on Court Avenue, and my son Tom is an 8th grade teacher in Fort Dodge. My wife is the media specialist for the DeWitt school system. I used to work for the state of Iowa as a probation parole officer. I retired 3 years ago after having a 38-year career in corrections. Over the years, I've been a member of a number of boards in DeWitt and surrounding areas. I was on the Clinton County Justice Coordinating Commission, one of the founding members. I'm currently serving as a volunteer at the Riverbend Food Bank, where I helped start the food backpack program in DeWitt. I've been past president of the DeWitt Park and Recreation, Saber Booster Club, etc. I'm running for office because I think in the past couple years, the state of Iowa has changed its course a little bit, and we aren't funding programs I feel we need to fund adequately. And that would be education, job training. The healthcare costs are getting out of control. And I just want to try to make a difference so that the same Iowa I grew up in, my kids can grow up in and thrive. And I'll leave it at that.
Norlin Mommsen, give us your opening statement.
Well, thank you, Dave, and good morning, everyone. I'm Norlin Mommsen. I'm a lifelong resident of Clinton County. I presently live in DeWitt with my wife, Denise. We have 5 grown children and 1 granddaughter. I graduated from East Central High School, and after graduation, I attended Iowa State University. Since then, I have been farming the family farm where I raise corn, beans, and cattle, and I also spent a time working in ag retail as an agronomist. The last 4 years, I've been serving as your state representative. While serving in the legislature, I am presently chair of the Ag and Natural Resources Appropriations Committee, the Education Committee, Agriculture Committee, Natural Resources Committee, and the Full Appropriations Committee. While on these committees, I have been very instrumental in the water quality bill that was recently passed. Our Ag and Natural Resources Committee this past year also designated extra money to our state parks to kind of get ready for the 100th anniversary that's coming up in 2020. And locally, I worked very hard on trying to get the hotel motel tax passed through. We got it through the House. We did not get it through the Senate, so that's one of my goals this coming session, is to get it signed by the governor. Also, I co-sponsored legislation giving the security guards at the courthouse here and the administration building some authority, so when people come in that they have some authority to protect the people inside. And I've also worked diligently to try and keep the plywood off the windows at Ashford University or Ashford College, and I'm really pleased to see it's being used now with the group from China. But you know, of all the things I've done at the Capitol, what I consider the most meaningful thing I've done, I floor managed the EpiPen bill through the Capitol and got it to the governor's desk, and that allows our school districts to have these life-saving EpiPens on hand so that anybody who has an allergic reaction can get immediate attention. And I never realized how important this was until I got a call from my son. He serves in the Army, and they were out on maneuvers, and he was saved by the EpiPen. He'd never had an allergic reaction to anything before and got bit up by wasps, and the EpiPen saved him, and they rushed him to the hospital. So like I said, that's my most meaningful legislation I've had a hand in.
Norlin, we'll start off with you and jump in. Medicaid privatization. You know, it's been going on. It moved it through the Republicans, and I guess as a guest on our weekly show, something you're in support of. I noticed today, just this morning, the governor has quoted in some newspaper article about maybe some things need to be looked at a little closer. She's saying she's hearing a lot of complaints about it out on the campaign trail. What are your thoughts? Are you still as strongly in favor of that Medicaid privatization? Do you think changes need to be made in what's going on?
Well, we did pass some major legislation here this last session to help make the MCOs much more accountable. And that would only have gone in force the 1st of July, and I know that's part of the new contracts that went into place to, like I said, make the MCOs more accountable. But you got to look back at kind of a little past history. In 1990, Medicaid was 7% of the total general fund budget. In 15 years, to 2005, it grew 9%. So in 15 years, it increased 2% of the general fund. But from 2005 to 2015, it's grown to 19% of the general fund. So there's been a 10% jump in 10 years there. So the cost of Medicaid is accelerating, and it's starting to put pressure on other parts of the budget today. And we talk about we need more money for our schools and our court systems. When you've got a portion of the budget growing at that rate, it puts severe pressure on the budget. Education costs amount to roughly 55% of the total general fund budget. You add another 20% from the Medicaid, that leaves very little for our court systems, our highway patrol, and our agriculture and other budgets. So I think what's going on, I'm glad the governor's taking a closer look at it, but I believe the legislation we passed also put a much more pressure on the MCOs to do their jobs.
Tim McClimon, what's your thoughts on that privatization of Medicaid?
Well, I don't think it's any secret that it's been a disaster since it went privatization. I think Governor Branstad heard that too much, and they weren't really prepared to get the correct MCOs running it, and consequently we have services being cut, providers not being paid, and some people that have been under Medicaid for years and years all of a sudden are having to appeal the CNAs that they've had working with them for X amount of hours a day. They're getting those cut back, and so you have people not getting care who need the care. We're not treating our people, our needy people in the state correctly. I'm glad the governor's finally figured out that there are some things that need to be changed, because these complaints have been going almost since its inception. But it needs to be probably rolled back to what it was, but it won't happen overnight because there's no infrastructure anymore. But they need to fix that problem.
Is it fixable?
As it is going right now, it doesn't seem to. They had to give the MCOs a 7.5% raise to get them to, I guess, stay with us. So if they keep getting money like that, they're probably not going to change their ways a lot. We need to do something, like Norlin said, they need to be held accountable, and right now I don't see that that's happening.
Norlin, any other follow comments? Or is it a fixable solution, do you think? Is there something out there? Do you think what you did will help alleviate some of the complaints?
Yes, I do. I really excited about what we did. Main thing of what we put in there was timelines. When someone has a complaint or concern, it starts the clock ticking for the MCO on how quickly they have to deal with it. And when I kind of looked into some problems when people came to me, it seemed like there was a delay. Like I said, the people wouldn't know why they were getting refused and stuff. So I was really tickled with the timelines. Like I said, once a complaint is filed, the clock starts ticking, and then if there's not dealt with, there's penalties, severe penalties for the MCOs.
Okay. Tim, we'll jump into another subject quickly. Let's talk about mental health care. The regionalization of mental health care has had some impacts in services and costs in in Clinton County in particular. I know that's one of the counties in this area. It's moved from a county by county basis to a regional plan. Your thoughts on that particular issue and good impacts or not?
Well, the mental health care overall in the state is atrocious, I guess. We have the fewest amount of mental health treatment beds in the country. The state of Iowa has the fewest beds. They're trying the regionalization, which is a good plan, but we still don't have a place to take somebody that needs the help. It wasn't uncommon back when I was still working as a parole officer for a deputy to have to take a mentally ill person to Council Bluffs or to Sioux City for a 72-hour hold, which means they're held for 72 hours, then they come back for court. Not a very efficient use of our time. See, there's a hospital being built in Des Moines that's going to have more beds, and I believe there might be one in the works for Davenport. But right now, for inpatient treatment, there's very, very little help available. I know Bridgeview down here is just severely underfunded. They don't have enough help, and they're a great group of people working, but they are working their fingers to the bone, literally. So regionalization hasn't solved a lot of stuff. It might take time, but it needs to be expanded.
Norlin, regionalization of mental health care.
Well, I think it's gone quite well. When I spoke with people involved, they're pleased with how it's going. When you look at statistics, though, the Mental Health of Iowa, a third party, ranks Iowa 6th best in the nation for mental health. So, and that's not political talking points. In the past legislature, we've put together a tracking system for beds to make sure, I mean, you can look it up on your phone and find out where available beds are. We've created access centers, and mental health for juveniles has been increased. And when we talk about funding, though, I get a little bit confused here. In the legislature for this region, a couple years ago, we allocated $200,000 for the region, and because Davenport wasn't holding or contributing quite as much as the other counties. And then we also changed the structure on the taxation so that basically Scott County could tax more for mental health. But now they haven't implemented any of that due to the fact they had too much money. So my question would be, why wasn't the region using the money? They have to bring down their reserves to only 20%. And now they're basically giving grants for stuff, and there's money there. Why wasn't it being used? And when you talk about beds, I believe the hospital in Bettendorf is adding 75 new beds. Genesis, I've been down there on a tour a couple years ago. There was they showed me the new area for mental health beds. So there's been a lot of work in that area. And I think the most important thing is the tracking system, so people know where the nearest one is when when someone is in need of a facility.
Norlin, talk about education funding. We put this out in 3 parts so that you answer all 3 at the same time. K through 12, the traditional funding that people may be most familiar with, also community college funding and higher education funding with the impacts there. So we'll let you address those 3 topics on education funding, because each one is kind of a separate entity in amongst itself.
Yes, they are, but then they're also
There's
together.
a connection there too.
Right, I understand. Well, we'll start with K through 12. K through 12 receives 45% of the general fund budget of all the money that the state gets in from sales tax and everything. That's 45%, so that's a significant amount. And if you look the last few years, when we've had to do some deappropriation, K through 12 has not been affected. Also, if you look, USA Today, I'm sorry, the Cedar Rapids Gazette says Iowa is the 4th best state in the nation when you look at K through 12 funding increases since the recent recession. The Des Moines Register states that teacher pay in Iowa is the 8th highest in the nation when adjusted for cost of living. And plus, I think what K through 12 is, we want to graduate and get a diploma. Iowa ranks number 1 in diploma, in the percentage of kids that getting a diploma. So we've always tried to make K through 12 a priority, and I think we have. The only significant decrease in funding for K through 12 happened during the Culver administration. Community colleges, we had to de-appropriate them a little bit last year, but this present year we're in, that was put back in, plus I believe an increase. Our community colleges are an important link between students can take classes there if they want to go on to a 4-year school, or if they want to go on to some type of certificate for employment. And with the Future Ready Iowa program that's being implemented, the community colleges are an important link in that. Your universities, I believe they're some of the top in the nation. When you compare our tuition rates to schools around us, we're very competitive. Compare them to Illinois, we're extremely much cheaper. That's why we have so many students coming from Chicago to the University of Iowa. So education has always been a priority. If you add everything together, the community colleges, K through 12, and the universities, they amount to 55% of the total general fund budget in the state of Iowa. And I think that shows a great commitment to education.
Tim, unless you address all 3 levels.
Well, I guess some of these statistics depends where you look for them. The K-12 funding is ranked 34th nationally by another group that's not Cedar Rapids Gazette or the Des Moines Register, and it's $840 million below the national average. State cost per student is $6,736, which is an increase of just over 1%. But I think what's lost in this whole numbers and things like that is when you get a 1% increase in the education budget, that's great. But everybody sitting here and everybody listening knows our expenses go up more than 1% a year for our buildings, our food, and anything else we have to do. And so we're, instead of really going up 1%, we seem to like we're falling back a little bit. I substitute school teach in a couple different schools in the area, and I see what is really happening in the schools. And God love these teachers, they're making do with what they have, and they've got a tough battle sometimes. I know my son and my wife are both teachers. They're spending money out of their own pockets for different things because there just isn't enough money to do whatever, the bulletin boards and things like that. So I think we need to really look and understand how much money it really takes to run a good school with good teachers, good equipment, good books, etc. As far as junior college is concerned, I'm a big proponent of junior college. I graduated from Clinton Community College. My son graduated from Fort Dodge, and I tell you that community college in Fort Dodge is unbelievable. They have the vocational training for, they do. They even have windmill technicians and mechanics, and they train carpenters. They train various different trades, and we need to not cut that funding because Future Ready Iowa is going to depend on vocational training for our high school kids moving on, and you can't cut the very source that's going to be training these kids, young adults. So we need to keep the funding up there and probably increase it, because you know that there's the plumbers and the electricians and all these guys that are my age are retiring, and they don't have people to fill the gap. I've been waiting for a plumber to do a minor job in my house for almost 6 weeks now, so I think it's time to look for a new one. But as far as the four-year college funding goes, that, we are cheaper than Illinois, that's for sure, but we're not cheaper than a lot of other places. And having two sons go through University of Northern Iowa, I know what it costs them and how hard they had to work during the school year, during the summer, to keep their loans down. And I just think that we used to fund colleges so much better, and now it's more of a burden on the student that's taking out big loans. You always hear the kids that are leaving school, it's 60, 70, 80, $100,000 worth of loans, and you can't start in a hole like that and expect to be successful.
Tim, first up, maybe this gets away from a specific topic, but maybe highlighted over the past many months, but maybe really put in the spotlight in recent weeks, is the civility in public and political discourse, if you want to put it that way. Your thoughts on that? Is that, of course, maybe we're talking, is that an issue in Iowa? Or is that just simply a national issue and Iowa's okay? What can you bring to the table?
Well, I think the people out in Washington, D.C. are showing us how not to do it. I've not been a member of the legislature, but I know the last couple of years when it seemed to me when the Republicans had control of all three, the House, the Senate, and the governor, didn't seem like people got along as well as they should have. And that may be because the people in power didn't listen to the other side as often, but it seemed a lot of bills went through with all the Republicans voting one way, all the Democrats voting the other way. That never works. And while I think they were civil to each other, as opposed to what's happening out in Washington, D.C., I think they maybe didn't work together as well as they could have.
Norlin, your thoughts, the civility in politics and even the public arena, what do you think?
Well, first of all, if you look at the Des Moines, 89.7% of the bills that pass there are always on a bipartisan nature, and I believe that's similar to what it's been in the past. And I've worked very hard to work with other legislators on issues. I worked on a driver's ed bill. I worked very close with members of the Democratic Party that had some ideas. I implemented them in amendments on the bill. Mary Wolf, Representative Wolf, and I have worked bills together. The hotel motel tax was co-sponsored by the both of us, and then the security measure of here that helped out our own Clinton County security officers with a joint measure. Plus, anybody that's listened to our Saturday program here, I believe the representative has very often complimented me on how working with me. So, like I said, I've tried very hard. And one thing I have found out there that when you have a little disagreement with somebody, the best thing to do is take them out for lunch and totally get out of the Capitol. And I've done that several times with people, and it's really developed a good relationship between us.
Well, I talked a little bit too. Of course, it's a big issue for the city of Clinton, and that's outside your particular district, but it probably is a concern to some of the other communities such as DeWitt and some of those areas. And that's a few years ago, the cut in property taxes for businesses and things like that. The state was going to kind of, as the term, backfill some of the reduction there. Can that continue? Will you support continuing that aid? Again, I know it's a big issue in the city of Clinton. I don't know about your particular district since you don't quite get into the city of Clinton, but I'm sure DeWitt is concerned about it, and the county has maybe some small impacts there as well.
Well, it is a big concern, and it's a big concern all across the state because certain parts of the state's benefited greatly by the rollback in property taxes, and other places haven't. And like you mentioned, Clinton has not benefited from it. And so any conversations that's taken place out at the Capitol, there's always been talk about how do we protect places like Clinton and Clinton County where they haven't benefited. So if something happens, I don't believe there'll be just a total across the board. Everything I have seen, I know Representative Grassley, when he presented some proposals, there's always been a holdback to protect, basically supplement the counties and cities that did not benefit. But if you look at the total budget, I was in a budget meeting at the Capitol, and one of the fastest growing, along with Medicaid, areas of pulling on our state budget is money going back to the cities and the counties. So you send your money in and we turn around and send it back. So, but like I said, it's being talked about, but I'm sure anything that comes out, and I will definitely be in support of anything that comes out that has protections in there for places like Clinton and Clinton County who have not benefited.
Tim?
Yeah, I don't, I know my taxes went up this year, so I don't think we're getting the benefit that we are, and you always hear about politicians talking, at least the ones I talk to, is most of these programs seem to help the big cities. And I think when you pass legislation such as a tax rollback or whatever for the businesses or for whoever, you need to look at it. We would have to look at it, how is it benefiting us here in eastern Iowa as opposed to anybody else in the state. And we've got to make it fair for everybody. And right now it doesn't seem like it is. Des Moines seems like they get the best deal of everybody, followed by probably Cedar Rapids.
You know, the Chapter 20, public negotiating, public bargaining, was altered by the legislators. What are your thoughts on basically public bargaining for teachers, public union for cities and counties, and those kind of things? That was changed dramatically. And what are your thoughts on that? Should that be brought back? Is it okay? The change is okay?
Well, this would be one of those bills that passed along party lines. I'm a 38-year member of AFSCME, so you can probably figure out how I'm going to answer this. And my dad was, and my brother were members of the UAW at John Deere. My son's a union member out in Fort Dodge. I got to tell a little story about my son, then I'll go on to the rest of it. When my son got hired at Fort Dodge, he got hired September. The following January is when they gutted collective bargaining. He called me and he was ready to go get a job in Minnesota. He had an uncle up there. He knew they were a strong union up there. He was ready to leave. Now, I thought, how can they say they want to keep our young, best and brightest in the state when they do something like that drives them out? Because I don't know, he stayed, but I don't know how many of his friends and other first, second year teachers that year decided to leave. That's it doesn't show that we have a lot of faith in our young people, I guess. The union is good. It protects the workers. It protects the employers. They can collectively bargain their benefits and their wages, and people don't like that, but generally speaking, they're not the highest paid people around. And the county workers, they're the guys that go out in the middle of the night and shovel the snow off the roads and things like that. They need to be adequately compensated, both with vacation and money. State or city workers the same way. They all do a service to our communities, and being in corrections like I was, the prison guards, these people do jobs nobody wants, and to take away their rights just isn't fair to them. I think we need to get the collective bargaining back, and I don't say it needs to be expanded, but we just need to get it back to at least to where it was. And a lot of people will say about school teachers, says, well, they got a raise this year. They got a 2 or 3% raise, and that's fine. But you're one school board president or one superintendent away from not having such a good school board. DeWitt has a great school board. Cal-Weed has a good one, and Bettendorf, everybody around here, you don't hear much complain about that, but it can change, and if it does, and they don't have the collective bargaining, you could be in trouble.
Norlin, your thoughts on that? Obviously, we talked about that on the weekly show.
Yes, and I think it's been very good. I've had multiple conversations with school boards in the area. I've had multiple conversations with teachers in the area, supervisors, and I think it's helped create a better conversation between the administrators and the employees. There's more interaction between what they needs to be done and how to better either the county or the school. Before it was just the contract, and that seemed to get in the way. So I'm really tickled how that's been going. Like I said, I've had a lot of good comments about it since it's been in place.
I wanted to get back on to a topic outside a specific bill. Maybe some specific acts have been taken. And it goes back to maybe what's in the news, and that's sexual assault, sexual harassment. The Iowa legislature had some issues with that particular topic, especially I think it was on the Senate side, not the House side. But is that a concern? Do you think some of the legislators should do something? I guess not only within the House, within the legislature, and what about the public arena? Do you see any things that the legislators should do to make this issue more of a in the spotlight, in just for the citizens?
Well, sexual harassment, assault, it cannot be tolerated anywhere, whether it's in a public office or a private business. Like I said, we cannot tolerate it whatsoever. There was an incident at the Capitol. It got dealt with, I believe, very well. Since then, previously every year we went through training. That was upgraded this last year to a little more in depth for everybody. We had to watch a video, and then we also sat through. There were people that came in and spoke with us, so we had a sign. Basically, you had a sign that you were there, and if you weren't there, you had to sit through a private. But I am a little concerned, though, at the Capitol. There's a senator out there that ran for governor that is refusing to resign, and I think it's an insult to the state of Iowa, that things he did in college, and he admits he did in college. And I'm really concerned about that because it makes all the work that we've done and try and lead by example. And I really would hope the parties involved would take care of that issue.
Tim, what are you?
I'm not going to touch the Bolton thing. After the Kavanaugh deal out there, that's just history is history. But when I worked for the state, we went through sexual harassment training, kind of not an ongoing thing, but something you need to go through periodically. And what needs to do, I mean, people need to be working in an environment where if someone is harassed or assaulted, they need to be comfortable going to their supervisor so it can be dealt with right away, not a month down the road or 6 months down the road. You need to work in a healthy environment where you don't feel intimidated if you report something like that.
Tim, talk a little bit, the district, without getting all the maps out, is generally the more rural areas of Clinton County and a piece of Scott County. How do you balance all that out? You have some urban areas of DeWitt in particular, and some of those areas. Describe your view of the district. That most of it's Clinton County, but it does include part of Scott County.
Well, other than the fact it's really big, I guess growing up around here, it's just home to me. I've got friends all over the district, from Elwood to Wheatland to Toronto to Donahue. I've got relatives down there. I've got friends that live in LeClaire. I don't really know it. I do have a friend in Princeton, I guess, now that I think of it. In Comanche, of course, I know a lot of people there. I think it's a district of real normal Iowans that are God-fearing, hard-working, and I think it's a great group of people. I don't know all that much about farming, and there's an awful lot of farmers out there, but I'm willing to learn, I guess, if I get out to Des Moines. I'm not naive enough to think I know all the answers for anything.
Lauren, what's your view of the district? You served it for a while, so you got to balance that out.
Yes, I do, but people are the same. No matter whether they live in town or in the country, they want Iowa to be a better place, and they want their family to stick around if at all possible. And I think that's part of my job, is to make Iowa a welcoming place for everybody. And I think one thing that I think I help or fit the district very well is my agriculture background, since a large portion of it is agriculture. And I have had so much to do with water quality. I'm on the Clinton County Soil and Water Conservation Board, and I deal with the conservation programs, whether it be soil erosion or cover crops. And, you know, water quality, whether it be point source pollution or non-point, you know, is all an issue. And I think my background helps fulfill that very well.
We talked a bit about bipartisanship earlier. Norlin, throwing a question out there, and I mentioned this yesterday. I don't have a specific legislative issue, but you can see, you know, both of you can see an issue where it might come up. Say there's an issue that's good for District 97, but the Republican Party is not in favor of it. The Democrats are, but it's good for your district. Can you break with your party to vote in favor of something in that particular scenario? And you can probably see those scenarios come up.
Oh, yes, and they have in the past. I mean, there's several times I voted against my party, and that's one thing I really admire the Republicans in the House. I have never been told how to vote. And there's been several cases. If you look, any issue, I made a promise to a young lady in Davenport at a forum that if there was ever a chance to help with the equity issue that they talk about down there, that if I would vote for it. And I told her yes, and I have honored that promise. And there's been times, like I said, I voted with the Democrats. I voted with them to suspend the rules to bring it up. Like I said, I have maintained that promise to her. And like I said, I voted against my party on that issue. There was an issue concerning in Ames, number of people that could live in a house. I don't recall the bill, but that one went. Well, I voted with the opposing party on that issue too, and was complimented by the people there. I received a letter thanking me for going with them because, like I said, so no, my first priority is the District 97. That's who's elected me, and that's who I'll support.
Tim, I know you think you can stand up and to your Democrats if there's something good for the district that maybe doesn't follow what they would support statewide?
I think anybody that knows me would pretty much tell you, yeah, I'll vote with the way I think I ought to vote. I'll vote for what the best bill is for our district in the state. I don't think I would have any problem doing that. Obviously, I'm too old to be a career politician starting now, so if I vote the way I want to, the way I think is right, and I don't get elected the next time, the sun will come up the next day.
We kind of wrap things up, and these campaigns have all lately been called a job interview. So we kind of decided we'll throw a job interview type question in here before we're done. Tim, you get the question that says, what do you think you've accomplished in your career that best compares what you think needs to get done as a legislator?
What have I accomplished in my career?
What accomplishment? Not that be the whole career, just something you think you've done in your career that you think matches what you think needs to get done.
I guess this is maybe a little too broad an answer, but I'm going to do it anyway. As a parole officer and probation officer, you have to deal with a lot of entities that don't necessarily like each other. That would be the defendant, the police, the sheriffs, collateral agencies, substance abuse, mental health, housing. Then you got the judges in there, and then you got the county attorneys in there, and the defense attorneys. It's up to my person, the probation or parole officer. You've got to get everybody working together to get an end result that's going to make that person who got in trouble with the law hopefully a better person, and at the same time protect the community, give the victim reparation. And that is not easy to do sometimes. It seems like that might be pretty close to what happens out in Des Moines sometimes, or Washington, D.C. Got a lot of people with a lot of different ideas, don't necessarily like each other's ideas, but in the end game has to be what's best for everybody. That's it.
Norlin, what do you think? What can you point to? What do you think is an accomplishment that you think matches what you do in the legislature?
Well, I would say my ag background has helped prepare me a lot for it. Agriculture is always changing. You don't know from day to day what's going to happen, what the weather is going to do. So you've got to be willing to look at the total situation, be able to adjust, and use the resources you have. And just like agriculture, and I think my background in agriculture, being willing to, I always call it switching to Plan B, and sometimes we get to Plan C, D, and I know there's been times I've gotten to Plan Z before we got something figured out. So I think it's my willingness to adapt. It helps prepare me.
Okay. Next one, we mentioned we give each of you a chance for a closing comment, kind of an open mic time. So, Norlin, you get the first time.
Well, thank you, and thank you for everybody for listening. So often we hear today the state that the sky is falling. You know, we need to roll back the tax reform bill. We aren't giving schools enough. But things just don't, third parties just don't support that. You know, we were recently named #1 state in the nation by U.S. News and World Report, and there were 9 criteria that went into that. One of them was education. We placed 5th in the nation in education in that report. Our health care was #3. CNBC ranks Iowa the best state in the nation for middle-class families. USA Today ranks Iowa the 3rd best managed state in the country. I spoke earlier, we got the 4th best state in K through 12 funding increases. The Cedar Rapids Gazette reported that. And 8th highest school teacher pay in the nation, reported by the Des Moines Register. So there's a lot of third parties out there saying the sky is not falling and things are good in Iowa. We need to improve things. If we don't improve, we go backwards. So, like I said, the state is not falling apart. I believe we're on the right path, and I'd appreciate your vote come November.
Tim McClimon, here's your chance for some open mic time.
Okay. Well, I guess we talk about funding universities and colleges and mental health and the judicial system, et cetera. What we didn't talk is where some of that money come from. I guess one of the things that needs to be looked into is the tax credits and the refundable tax credits that we're awarding out for different companies. Obviously, Apple's one that got $20 million, and they provided 49 jobs in exchange for that $20 million. The refundable tax credits that are going to, and these are big corporations that are getting tax credits to begin with, and then if they have more credits than what they can use, the state actually sends them a check, a refund check, and that does not make any sense, and it amounts to a pretty substantial amount of money. I think one of the first things that needs to happen out there is review every one of those tax credits and refundable tax credits and make sure we're getting bang for our buck. I know they just awarded a pretty good one for a meatpacking company out west, and they're in exchange for over 100 jobs. Now that's a tax credit that makes sense. $20 million for 49 jobs doesn't make sense. To the company, the first company in the world, I think, to be worth over $1 trillion. So we need to look at things like that. That will free up money to fund some of the, what I consider the necessary programs, and I would like to get a chance to go out and work on that.
I would like to thank Republican Norlin Mommsen and Democrat Tim McClimon for coming in to visit with us today about their race for State House District 97, and tomorrow we'll get a chance to visit with Democrat Murray Wolf running for State House District 98 on our forum. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.